our show's on character today. You and I have been talking for 15 minutes, and we keep coming back to character struggles in the lives of people around us, in the media. So let's have a discussion on character. It's probably not a more acute time, I think, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? So I love words. I'm what do they call that? A logophile. I think I like words. I like the definitions. So, and I'm always curious, character, the word character. I thought, man, if you tell most kids today, ask them what's character, they'd say it was, and they name some, it's Iron Man or it's Thor or it's, some character. Do they even know anymore? So first definition that pops up on Google, Merriam-Webster, it says character, one of the attributes or features that make up and distinguish an individual. Next one is dictionary.com, says the aggregate of features and traits that form the individual nature of some person or thing. Now, here in personal development, and I'll hit one in a second. We tend to, well, no, I'll just read it. So here's one of the next, how Google has questions, like top questions people ask always kind of underneath. First one is, how do you define character? And the first definition that pops up is one that was printed in Success Magazine. And it says your character is the degree to which you live your life consistent with high life enhancing values. A person who lacks character is one who compromises on higher level values such as honesty, integrity, in favor of low order experience. That's how they did it. But what was interesting to me was if you look up just the flat definition of character, it's just saying what makes up and distinguishes you as an individual. It doesn't say good or bad. It doesn't say right or wrong. It's just saying this is kind of the essence of you, though in personal development in the context of this show, if I type a headline that talks about, hey, we're going to talk about character, we're by proxy going to think, oh, it's about good character. But character is, I like it because it's basically saying this is just kind of what you boil down to. This is what people feel about you. And to a great degree, I will put it in that it's trust or non-trust. It's like or dislike. It's feeling cared for or not. It's narcissism, or what's the opposite of narcissism? Is there one? Whatever the opposite of narcissism, I don't know.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah. Other interested, other focused, I guess.
Selflessness would probably be
Okay.
the opposite of narcissism.
Okay. But character traits. And so you and I were just talking, gosh, we talked about a few things, but it's interesting. You do wonder, I feel like, Tom, we want people of character most, but then we vote a lot of times for people regardless of their character. And you and I were talking just a minute ago about Joe Rogan. At this point, nobody doesn't, especially if they listen to podcasts. Joe Rogan, biggest podcast on the planet for the most part. And I don't know the guy. I can't say yay or nay about him personally. I see what everybody else sees, what's in the media and how he talks and stuff. I don't know if he's a person of character, of good character or not. I really don't know. And I can't really say, is he a person of bad character? Again, I don't know him. He does what he does, but we all vote for him. I don't listen to him. I have just to kind of check him out. What is he doing, podcasting and whatnot. But all these people who are obviously irritated with him are irritated because they voted for him by hitting play and listening to him. And it's interesting when we talk about character, and because I fear that with him, I use that as an example. Are people voting for him? Are they listening to him for his character? I don't think so. It's entertainment. It's interest. And he's a superstar. Spotify, who may kick him out, paid him $100 million to be exclusive to him. And I am concerned that it's kind of eroded the gravity of character. Do people these days look and go, hey, it's valuable to my life. It's in my self-interest to have good character. It feels eroded. What are your first thoughts?
Well, so of course, I agree that character can be good or bad, positive or negative.
Yeah.
And I ask people all the time, what do you want to be known for? Like one of our calls today on our Choose to Win mentoring call, one of our guys, Carlos, says, "Hey, great question. You're at your funeral, and people are and you're walking down the aisle of the church, and you're in the casket at the front, and you're walking, your spirit's going down the aisle. What are people saying about you? That's your character. What do you want them to be saying about you? That's, and so everybody's got their own definition. So people say, be true to yourself. Like that's the holy grail. And then somebody is, and then they cancel them because it doesn't agree with what they say.
Well,
so who has less character?
Yeah. And so obviously people who listen to the show know us, and they know we're going to talk about the values and the benefits of having good character. So that's a given. But if we come over here and poke the other side a little bit, I am concerned that at face value, do enough people care or see the value in having good character? I mean, we're at a place right now where, we want instant gratification, and we'll stave off a deeper satisfaction for just an immediate one right now. I mean, we know that's a culture that we're in, where we can, as we can get more and more things just instantaneously. And when you ask that question, Tom, when you're, going down, I mean, you can hear the sitcom answer to that. Dude, when I'm dead, I don't care. I'm going to, live life, eat, drink, and be merry, have fun now. And when I'm dead, and I don't care. I mean, I could hear that being said, and I'm afraid that there's an underlying more and more feeling of that, because people aren't understanding the long-term benefits of character, which, to me is brought to light. It's really in my face with my kids and my character. What do they see? How would they testify to me right now? And it's also, I did an interview last week, Tom. Some guys interviewed me for their podcast, and they were talking about some of the podcasting, but that came up. I said, man, I'm in such a glass house. I have kids who not only listen to my podcast, but I got one adult daughter, who produces some of them. So she's going to hear it. So if I say something that's giantly hypocritical or make some claim to my character, I mean, they know I got to sit down and eat dinner with them, so my character feels like on a spotlight. And I'm grateful for that acuteness, but I don't know that that's most people's reality. And again, where's the culture thinking? How are they feeling about character? And when's the last time you heard about character in the general culture? Not at maybe your church, but when's that ever been an issue, even of a presidential debate?
Yeah, well, it got mocked in presidential debates. Traditional family values got mocked because a large percentage of people they like progressive values, right? And so all these things make up character. And when we're talking about politics, this is what's interesting. I can't remember the last study that I saw, or poll. It's over 80%. It might even be 90%. Something around 90% of people don't trust Congress. Mm-hmm. So you have Democrats, Libertarians, Republicans, everybody in between saying, what do you think of Congress? Do you trust them? No, I don't. I mean, the only people who poll worse is the media. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do? Well, what happens is people agree. It doesn't matter whether you're a liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. You say Congress is the problem, but then they all go and vote for the same congressperson that they voted for last time. So it can't be both right? If everybody believes locally that the one they elected is right, but Congress has a problem, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so then that's the age-old question. Do we vote for who's right, or do we vote for what's right?
And there's character. Here's a funny story, Tom. This morning, I'm taking my boys I've got two boys who go to school. It's about 15 miles away, and there's a bus that comes part way up. It's an early colleges, kind of high school, different kind of school thing. So I take them to the bus. Nobody's there. Turns out we missed the email that said the bus wasn't coming today. So I drive them all the way down to the Springs, Colorado Springs. and we're early, like really early, like almost before they can even go in, because the bus takes a while. But so we got there, and so I had made a joke, or one of the kids did, about getting a donut. Well, okay, we're a family that likes to imbibe in good food, but donuts are not a very common thing. We talk about healthy food, but I thought, okay, I can also, we're flexitarians. We went and got donuts, Tom, and so my two boys, and they're, again, that's not a normal thing. We went and got some donuts, and it was in a grocery store that had a Starbucks. So I got Starbucks. So I'm sitting there, paid for my Starbucks. We got the donuts that we had picked up back in the back corner in hand. And we're just lively talking, having a good time, walking out the door. And one of the kids says, do we have to pay for that? We're carrying the bag of donuts right out the front door. I had just forgotten. I paid for my Starbucks, and in my head I paid, but we hadn't paid for that. And we laughed and literally went back in and had a talk. And this was it was before I was even thinking about this topic for our show. But I said, man, it's interesting, because without the character that I have agreed to, the morality and ethics, why would I go back in and pay? It's a big company. The donuts are like 69 cents each. We've got very small amount and stuff. Who cares? Just go on. Why go back in? And sometimes I'm surprised that enough people actually do. It kind of gives me a little faith in humanity that people don't, because it's so easy to, obviously, just walk out with your stuff. But it was a discussion with them on, that's relevant. Why go back in? Why does it really matter? And of course, with them, I'm thinking about, man, the benefits. Well, and that is, obviously the moral of this thing, the benefits of having the kind of character that people trust you.
Yeah. When I was 13, in Sunday school, Mr. Garrett was my teacher. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Garrett was older than mom and dad. So he was probably in his 60s, late 60s. And so mom and dad said, hey, why don't you invite Mr. Garrett and his wife to come eat lunch with us? And we were going to go to the country club. And it was about a 25-minute drive from the church. And so dad said, why don't you ride with Mr. Garrett so you can give him directions when you get to it? So we get in the car, and we're downtown Dallas. We get in the car and we drive, and we got to go through the toll booth. Well, back then it was coins. It was a quarter. So we get up to the toll booth, and so I'm 13. So this is 44 years ago. Mr. Garrett rolls down his window. It's not electric. Mm-hmm. He throws the quarter in. He waits a few seconds. He drives through, and the alarm goes off. So they didn't have cameras back then or any of that stuff. So he panics. Not because the police are going to come after us, because they won't. It's, a quarter. But because he didn't pay, or he thought he paid and it missed. So he pulls off the first exit, drives back around, gets back on the tollway, pays a quarter, gets off the next exit, comes back around, and then pays the toll again.
Goodness.
What's the point? There was a 13-year-old boy in the back of the car, mm-hmm, seeing that not only is integrity and honesty important, but so is the appearance, mm-hmm, of integrity and honesty. And I'll never forget, 44 years ago that happened.
And you're telling the story.
And I'm telling you the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and some people will go, oh, that's stupid, that's not practical, or whatever. And so now you grow up as a boy, and you've got your daughter watching you. You've got your son watching you. Or you're hiring somebody to do the books at your company. Do you hope that at some point in their life they had a Mr. Garrett?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a good analogy because yeah, we can easily justify ourselves out of it, but my gosh, are we okay with our kids or somebody else not being honest, with somebody in our company, somebody we work with not being honest? Man, we're so quick, and we see this in the culture right now, so quick to place blame on anyone who we feel like has stepped out of line, is not doing what's right. And yet we're in a culture that makes fun of, cheating on your taxes and doing those things. And I mean, what you just said there too, though, it reminded me of who we talk about so often, Shanti Feldhahn, in her book, The 30-Day Kindness Challenge. And that big piece that stands out to me from that book is being kind. It changed my perspective. Being kind is not just about doing the right thing. It's not just about the reciprocity that you're going to get from somebody else. It's because it just makes you feel better. It's going to benefit me by being kind, regardless of whether the person deserves it, regardless of any justification not to. It's just going to benefit me. And if they never change, if they get worse, I'm still going to feel better. It's a win-win all around. That when you're talking about doing the right thing, and I've thought about that, if there's an opportunity to not be honest, I don't go away from that feeling good, feeling better. I feel better about doing the right thing. And somebody could argue, it's just a cultural construct. And that's, I don't know if we can do a science-based research model on the benefits of good character, the benefits of honesty. But regardless of how you try to define that or try to showcase that, man, I know for me, I feel better when I'm kind. I feel better when I'm honest. I feel better when I do the right thing. I feel better when I give instead of take. And I say that as a guy I'm a very self-focused person. I am an aggressive driver. I am an impatient person by nature. So I know those things about myself. I want to get where I'm going. And if you are impeding my progress, I am right away naturally frustrated with you. And how does it make me feel? I mean, your dad did that's one of his clips from a long time ago. The person pulls out in front of you and cuts you off in traffic, and you're yelling and screaming at them, and they have no idea as they go along their merry way. And you're just sitting there like stabbing yourself in the eye with a fork. How's this? I have to think about that. My kids know that. Hey, there's somebody, guys, we have the chance to see the scenery because the guy in front of us is doing 10 miles an hour. And there we are. And who suffers most? That's a great spot too, that we don't talk about with character. If we said having good character, it just makes you feel better. How about that? Aside from anything else, but we don't, again, it's not a common, this is not a common conversation. It's like the common sense. It's not common anymore.
Yeah. One of the questions that I posed, our Choose to Win mentoring group today was, the times of disruption, do they give you a better opportunity to exhibit influence and example? In other words, the more the pressure's on, the tougher it is, the more disruption happens. As a mom, a dad, a friend, a coworker, a leader, does that afford you more opportunity to have a bigger influence and be a better example? And one of the ladies on the call, this is great advice. She said, she was talking about her grandkids, and there's been some family upset and some challenges, and so her grandkids are living in her house, and there's all that stuff. And she said, we switched shoes. And I said, what is that? And so she tells the group, she said, yeah, I learned this. But what you do is, if you're having a disagreement with someone, you both take your shoes off and you switch shoes. And she said, so my grandkid, who's huge, he gives me his shoes, my feet fit right in. He puts his feet on top of my shoes, right? And so it's symbolism, and it says, okay, now you get to share from your perspective, and I'm going to hear you through your shoes. And then the other is going to do the same thing. And this is where she said was amazing. She said, when you know you're going to be heard and listened to, it changes everything.
Yeah.
And so what happens, and when there's so much, the burnout is what we hear about all the time, but that bleeds over everywhere with so many people going through a challenge, is you've got to take one step back and say, what's your why? And it's the old farmer story where, 4 o'clock in the morning, the farmer gets up and the wife says, "Hey, what are you getting up so early?" He says, "Well, I got to get the kids up because there's farm work to be done." And she said, "It's January. There's no crops going on. Let them sleep." And he says, "I'm not raising crops. I'm raising men." And so what's your why? So character, to me, character should be a beacon around your why. And so people who people who just drive straight on through the toll booth saying it's no big deal, it's only a quarter, they're forgetting the why is the 13-year-old kid in the back seat. It's not my immediate convenience. Character and convenience very rarely go together, do they?
That's a great point. Great point. Yeah, they don't. And that's what we're seeing. That's a great point. Character. I got to write that down, Tom. Everybody write that down. Stop your car. Character and what'd you say? Convenience.
Very rarely go hand in hand.
Very rarely go hand. You're right. It takes, just like your example, the guy trying to do the right thing. They don't. They take time to consider somebody else. They take time to listen. They take time to understand, as you're talking about. And that's probably when I am most at risk of not exemplifying good character, is when it is not convenient for me. And it's interesting because I was sitting here thinking about, and we did a show on trust. I wish I knew what episode it was. You and I did a show on trust about how most people, and we did it more from a business focus. Most people we think of ourselves as trustworthy, but if you don't do the work to communicate to a degree in your business, that trustworthiness, you can fail by you can not benefit from it. I mean, you've got to figure out ways. Just, putting that we stand for integrity on your website doesn't help, because everybody says that. And it's the things that we can do, that you can be an honest person. You can be a kind person. You can be a person who thinks about others, and erode your character by doing some things that, even if they don't erode your trust, it can still erode your character. And again, I say this as somebody, my kids, my family, they know I'm a good guy. They know I'm an honest guy. And yet they would also say there are some things that I have done. I'd love to put that all past tense, but probably still do, that erode my character, that I can tend to be impatient, like I said, that I can tend to be controlling. I can be a nice, kind, good-hearted guy, but I can tend to control. I've even been said to dominate in some certain scenarios, that I can tend to be inconsistent, which I like in my personal life. So if it's just me, man. So today I've been by myself. I took the boys to school, and then went to a cabin where I'm doing some work, and I do whatever I want. If I feel like running, I go run. If I feel like stopping and playing, what is it called? Word Feud, I think. It's like a Scrabble type thing that I play with with one of my sons, with Caleb, who, man, I stop and do that. If I'm tired, man, I can shut my eyes on, lay down on the couch for a minute, and I do whatever I want. I can be as inconsistent as I want. Great for me. But now when that involves other people, and I've had that happen with my family, with people I work with, that I am inconsistent, and that does not work for them. It does not help them. Good for me. It doesn't help them. It erodes my character. And what are the things we do? And the opposite side of that, Tom, is, and I know this is different. Not everybody's in the same position that we are, but if you're in an area where part of your work, especially, and your family, if you've got a big, if you've got family, you are in a place of influence, and my greatest asset is trust. I mean, that's it. If I look at everything I know how to do, which we're in a culture right now who seems so laser focused on what you can do, What is the skill? What is the knowledge? What can you do? And yet we're dying because people want to align with people in regards to who they are. Back to that trust culture. And I look at that, the biggest asset I have is not that I can hold a good conversation and do a podcast. It's not that I can write well. It's not that I can, run a business. It's not. Biggest asset I have is trust. That's it. And doing that is character, which it just shows through. And I think we're probably also, Tom, and I haven't defined this why, but it feels like we're also in a place where people are more sensitive to it. I'm trying to think of a politically correct term to say it, but it's like a bull crap meter. Everybody has it and they can see it a mile away, smell it a mile away. You know what I mean? It feels like we're more sensitive to it too. We want character, man. We will turn on somebody who we feel lacks character. And yet I don't see the same people really pursuing it and trying to model it and solidify it in their lives. And I'm going to include myself in it. We're in a culture that I'm part of.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the things that I talk about in the leadership training that we do around coach leadership is this idea of canceling people. But most cancellations aren't obvious and verbal or an attack. Most cancellations are subtle. And I'll just give the example of a leader. They bring somebody on the team, they train them on something, it doesn't go well. They train them again, it doesn't go well. They train them again, it doesn't go well. And instead of letting them go or trying to figure out something else, they just cancel them in their head. They're like, okay,
yeah,
this person's going to take up space. They're going to do that. That's all they're capable of. And they basically, they're just existing now. And what's that term that I read? It's like, there's something worse than attacking somebody. That's making them irrelevant.
mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's like the worst thing that can happen. Meanwhile, that person on their team's a Mensa and they learn different, right? They've got some superpower, unique skill that needs to be tapped into that's going to take a little work. And they never see it. They never recognize it. They never, because their why is confused. It's about them. It's not about the bigger why. And so we all get hurt when we get ignored or treated like we're irrelevant. And yet we do it, I mean, subtly all the time, right? I mean, it's just the reality of it. So I like, the line, I see you. That's a big line.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, that's a big idea. And can you, can you see someone, like truly see them, if you don't have the right kind of character?
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying there, Tom, I mean, I've seen quotes, probably everybody's seen these, but do we really take them to heart and watch our own attitudes and verbalization about other people in regards to what we say about somebody else and how I think we understand it by how we treat somebody else. How you treat somebody says a lot about you. We kind of get that concept, but man, we don't often put it to our speak. And when we see the volatile communications in media today, in the headlines today, and I look at some of these really high profile people and see how they talk about other people, and I'm cringing about what it says about them. And we don't take that to heart. And to that degree, Tom, we're talking about character, as I'm just talking vaguely about people out there, some of the big names, but all of us, we tend to. I had a guy teach me a long time ago, or he made me, help me be aware. Name's Jimmy Gibson, smart marketing guy, and taught me about in regards to your brand, right? So you are the kingpin in the Ziglar brand, and Ziglar has a brand. Nike has a brand. Apple has a brand. And it is this. It's kind of, going back to our definitions. It said again, the first one, Merriam-Webster, character, one of the attributes or features that make up and distinguish an individual. A brand is the characteristics of a company, product, service that distinguishes what they're about. So we all kind of get that. But what he taught me is that we can't say what our brand is. So Nike can't say, hey, this is our brand. They can't claim it. They can try to influence it. They can spend billions of dollars on a Super Bowl ads to try to influence us as to what we think the brand is. But ultimately, that's it. We say what the brand is. We say what the brand of Apple is. We said what the brand of IBM is when they tanked and didn't stay relevant. And we all voted by, to what their brand was by not voting for them. We mentioned Joe Rogan. He's got a brand. People know what he's about and they vote with every time they hit play and listen to them. Same thing with character. Here we are with character. And I think we a lot of times find ourselves in a place of we would tell you what our character is: honesty, integrity, morality, kind, giving, generous, name it, whatever. Wise. I mean, we could say all those things. That's what we say, but our kids, our fellow coworkers, our managers, bosses, our employees, our audience, our readers, our listeners are ultimately going to say how they experience our character. And it's interesting here as we talk about a podcast. That's one of the benefits of that. You can write a book and put it out there and have great content, and the book sells. And you can do that and maybe skirt some of your character. And you've seen that, Tom. I've seen that. We've even seen people up on stage, you see them and they're in front of 50,000 people and they give a good message. Message is solid, not taking away from that, but they may be lacking in character off stage. Much harder to do if you're on a podcast and you're doing a show a week, a show every 2 weeks. You can't really mask it through that. And it's going to come out what your character is like, which is why I think we're seeing so many people turning to podcasts. They are seeking who can they trust. And man, yeah, I don't want to, it's so difficult. I wish I could make some examples of some different people, because we have people who are entertainers and anybody can come on and advertise that. Millions of people are listening. And so they come on and, promote a fast food company, whatever. There's not any recommendation, but we have a lot of podcasters over here on the Paul Harvey type model where people are listening to them and literally listening to the products that they literally personally endorse. Just like us, you and I have personally endorsed MetPro. We've been customers of MetPro and their coaching model. And that's a legitimate thing. And by doing that, by putting our voice behind it, we by proxy recommended it. We gave them an endorsement. People are looking for that because they need products and services out there. There's so many. Who do they pick? And they're looking for that. And my understanding, I didn't get it firsthand. My understanding, though, was that Tim Ferriss, most people know him. Tim Ferriss at one time stopped his advertising, thought he would do that, go to a paid model, and had people complain because they said, we really look forward to hear all the products and services, things you're trying out on yourself as the human guinea pig, which I think he calls himself. They really liked hearing that. How interesting. So he has created trust. He really has utilized an aspect of character. Doesn't mean everything, that he's exactly where everybody would line up morally or ethically or whatnot, but for his audience, he's gained trust. So that's been interesting to me too, Tom, to look at that, the character. We try to influence it, but everybody else is going to tell us what ours is.
Yeah. I like the idea of a trusted filter. We get so many millions of inputs. I mean, the inputs come from all directions from everybody, and we don't know how to make heads or tails out of it. We hear about it on Google, the Google reviews, are those gamed? Yelp reviews, are those gamed? Can we trust, a survey or a study? We were just talking about this earlier. My wife sent me an article today, and this is interesting. We were talking about Joe Rogan earlier. And the article was a little blurb. I don't think we've talked about mask and vaccine and ivermectin on the show. Maybe our ratings will
No,
go up.
or maybe so. Let's get politically incorrect and opinionated.
So January 31st at 11:47 a.m., Reuters, a big news agency, published an article, and it says Japan's KOA, or however they say it, KOWA, says ivermectin showed antiviral effect against Omicron. Now, here's what's interesting is the sides are going to line up. And the people who are pro ivermectin are going to say, see, I told you so. And the people who are anti ivermectin are going to dish the source and say they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. I'm predicting it. It's probably already out there. It was a breaking story today. And actually, what should happen is, wow, this is fantastically great news. Can you please share the study so we can review it, so we can take action as fast as possible on something that would benefit us all?
Yeah.
Like, that's the only response that you can have, because the headline, so this group did a big study on it and blood tests and everything, but they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't released a study. They've just released this report. But everybody's going to line up, and nobody has a trust filter anymore. Right? Meaning that they just trust things that are biased towards what they already believe. And that's not a great way to live your life, because we all get influenced by people who take us down a path that's not in our best interest.
Yeah. A herd mentality. I mean, it really is. And I think it's a result of us being so busy, so overwhelmed. We don't have the margin. We don't want to take the time. And some of the stuff is just, it's so hard to figure out. I mean, I got to admit that sometimes it is hard. I'm just looking for somebody else. I'm looking for, Dr. Randy James to tell me, okay, I'm reading all this stuff. What should I do, man? Just tell me, and I'm just going to go do it. At some point, I literally feel like that often. Like, I just don't have the time to figure it out, or I don't want to take the time, or I just feel incompetent. I literally find myself there, Tom. I mean, I'm there. I get billed like you do as a thought leader, right? We're supposed to be wise and know all these things. Man, there's so much stuff. I feel more lost every day. And I'm just turning to some expert who I trust is in on the know, which is hard there, because you're always going to find another expert that I respect that differs on the opinion. And at some point, I'm going to make a trust vote. And I am. And I think to some degree we all have to, but man, it feels like we're seeing a lot of, just herd mentality, and whoever you somewhat align with, you just go with them. And gosh, maybe we're off track now, but, and you stand on it, right? I want to at least say, man, I'm going that direction because it's just the best I can figure out. I got to make a decision. I really don't know. I wish I did, but at some point you got to make a decision. You're going to get a vaccine or not. You're going to do this or not.
So let's look at some wisdom here. So people who've taken a stand on, let's just call it pro-vax or anti-vax, and they've come out, what they've also done is adopted an identity that suddenly gets threatened if somebody questions it. Yeah. So now I'm defending an identity rather than, is that a good idea or not? So what if your identity was one of wisdom, which was, you know what? Some things change. So what do you got? Because now it's, your identity is, I'm always trying to figure out what's the wisest course for me, right? What is the best decision I can make for me and my family? Not, I have to fall in line with this thought process because I've put a lot of words out there that I'd paint me into that corner. This is Dr. Kenneth Cooper, who we're, Dad was good friends with him. He was Dad's doctor. He invented the term aerobics. He wrote a book called The Aerobics Way. He was the leading heart medical expert in the United States, who proposed that running and getting in shape was the best way to keep your heart strong. He started heart attack patients jogging and exercising instead of convalescing for 4 months, right? He got them out building it back up as soon as possible. He was a heretic until all the studies came together that proved what he knew. And so he wrote books on running, and that was his deal. And then later on, he came out and said, you know what? I've done more study. Running is not the best long term solution. Fast walking is better for somebody's body over the long term than running. And they said, wait, you were wrong? And he said, no, I wasn't necessarily wrong. I had all the best information. Now I've got new information for a better choice. Now, is running wrong for everybody? No, but I'm just going to tell you, for the average American who wants to be happy and healthy at 100 years old, that daily exercise, getting the heart rate up for a certain amount of minutes, can be accomplished just as effectively with a fast walk or some other things that aren't as difficult on the joints. Now, that's wisdom, isn't it? I mean, that is character that says, hey, it's what's right. It's not who's right. Just because I'm the who said it was this way, if I know that's no longer right, do I stand by my guns and just keep saying something that I know is no longer true? Or do I vote for what's right?
That's Tom. You just hit there's a guy I want to have on the show. I heard him on another show. Can't even remember his name. It was on belief, and would be good for us to discuss, but talked about, you just mentioned identity. That was the big word. And when we look at our character, it has so much to do with our identity, with our self-image, with our confidence or lack thereof. And yeah, with what you're saying right there, I'm thinking, my character, what do I want to identify with? I mean, we could say love on a big word, but how about kindness? Do people see Kevin as a kind guy, as a generous guy, as a humble guy, as a considerate guy, as a patient guy? Those are the things that I want to identify with. And those are what will make up my character. And that's what this guy talked about. And forgive me, I wish I could give him credit. I'll just say the credit's not me, but he was talking about belief, and that we tend to form our beliefs around our identity and things that we are invested in. And it doesn't have to do kind of what you're back to. It doesn't have to do with proof, right, wrong. It's just the things that we are holding on to because we can't not. And I mean, you can put at the top of those things, is your identity and what you have adhered to as your character something that's really outside of you? It's your political party. It's your religion. It's your status. It's whether you're conservative or liberal. It's you're pro this or you're pro that, or you are an Apple person or a Windows person. All these things that we grab onto that has nothing to do with our character. Because in that, whatever your political party, religion, your socioeconomic viewpoint, what you think about global warming, all those kind of things, those are they can be important and they can be a part of you. Has nothing to do with the character that you have that makes me want to trust you or like you or align myself with you or do anything with you. Those are back on those things of kindness, again, generosity, humility, consideration. We could do a whole list of those things. And yet, man, we're in, again, a culture that's so wrapped up, like you said, in what we identify with, the bumper sticker we put on our car, what kind of car we have, what political party, what religion, what perspective on so many of these topics that none of us know diddly about, other than what we are accumulating from the media, which everybody goes say you can't trust it, but we tune into it and vote for it and look on Facebook and late night TV and YouTube and whatever, and form our opinions based on stuff out there, which again, I get, but man, we're not adhering ourselves to the things that build the foundations of character that get us the benefit that comes with good character and trust and people But like you said, wisdom, do they view you as wise or opinionated?
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's rubber hits the road there.
Yeah. And so how do we take this out? So what we all want is discernment, right?
Yeah.
We want to be able to discern, given the choices that I have, how do I respond to the situation?
Yeah.
Well, I believe in order to have consistently good discernment, you've got to have a strong moral foundation around character qualities like honesty, integrity, trust, kindness, love, respect, all those different things. So now I'm going to string some thoughts together. Dad said, you are what you are and where you are because of what's gone into your mind. You can change what you are and where you are by changing what goes into your mind. So if we're looking at our life and going, man, I'm not really digging the outcomes that I'm getting, those outcomes are a result of your thinking and what you do, which is all a result of what's gone into your mind. So Dad said, good news. You can change who you are and what you are by changing what goes into your mind. So I simplified that statement for the book Choose to Win. And I said, what you feed your mind determines your appetite.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So what are you hungry for? That's going to tell you where your mind has been. And what do you want to be hungry for? And that's going to tell you what to put into your mind. Okay. So let's just say you want to have wisdom and discernment, right? I'm hungry for more wisdom and discernment. So what am I going to have to put into my mind to build the foundation to where when I'm looking at the world and my compass and my true north is making decisions, the needle's not going everywhere. It's going, oh, well, that's pretty clear, because a lot of people are confused. So then here's the third thing. So those two quotes, and then this one in the book, The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb, he studied people who did the best after black swan events, after massive disruption, whether their country got taken over by a dictator or a world war or a pandemic. And this is what he learned. The people who did the best, they spent about 10 minutes getting news and input from one side of the the herd, and then about 10 minutes getting news and input from the other side of the herd. And then they went about solving problems of people. And because their input wasn't, hours and hours of one biased opinion or the other, when decisions came to them, they had the opportunity and the ability to discern wisdom, because they were focused on growing themselves to solve other people's problems. And they look at the world and everything, and they did better. And so do we want to do better in life? So there you go. You seek out wisdom and discernment by choosing what goes into your mind. And if it gets too heavily based on identity from one side or the other, you're eroding your ability to discern.
Yeah.
Man,
Man,
if it's not
you're
based on, if it's not based on honesty and integrity and those core values, if it's not based on what's right, and it is based on who you follow, what they say, you're in for a long, long road.
yeah. Man, your question, just that of what are you hungry for? What a convicting question for us all to ask ourselves and sit with. What are we hungry for when it comes to, especially with relationships, relationally, what are we hungry for? And you could start by looking, because based on the headlines out there, what does it seem like the culture is hungry for? Which isn't fair, because it's the media, it's not all the culture. They're stirring it up, but we can look at what's the flavor of hunger out there. It's doesn't seem to be good overall. And then to bring that back to ourselves, what are we hungry for? Is it for our own personal protection? Is it for validation? Is it affirmation? Is it just comfort? Is it vengeance? I mean, what are we hungry What are we hungry for? Is a powerful question. That's a great, you gave me a couple good lines around character in this episode, Tom, but that's a good one too. My character is ultimately going to be a result, a depiction of my appetite, of what I am hungry for. If I am most hungry for acclaim, people will start to feel that. If I'm most out there hungry for authority, for power, for sympathy, for what, it's all going to come out. And we are going to be seen. People will know our character, and we will benefit or not from good or bad character. Man, it's just good stuff. I'm gonna go back and pull some quotes out of this and some thoughts. Love having these conversations with you to round out and deepen the topic.
I love it. Yeah. I was just wrapping it up in my head. Are we hungry
Mm-hmm.
to be right? Or are we hungry to discover the truth?
Okay. Maybe that's the headline right there. Are we hungry to be right? Or are we hungry to discover the truth? Give Tom Ziglar credit for that when you put it on your social media right there. Brother, thank you.
Thank you, sir.